This video we're going to be working on super basic animations in 3D, and we've worked in 2D before to make animations, but there's definitely a difference in 3D versus 2D. In 2D we use typically sprite sheets or the changing of sprites over time, but in 3D we're actually going to use some objects that maybe we model ourselves. In this case we're just going to be using some Unity primitives and then controlling their movement through space over time. That is the fundamental difference between 2D and 3D, and the pattern is going to be the same that we did for 2D stuff, in that we're going to be using creating animations in the animation window, and then using an animator component as well as the animator window to control those states. Cool. So we're going to get into our scene that we've been working on, and you can see that we have our first person controller. Basically it's just a camera with a couple colliders on it. We want to create a sphere object that's going to allow us to be shown in front of us. And if you've played any first person shooter type of games, you know that in real life the gun is actually held very, very high in terms of being able to see it when we walk around, and you'll notice that. So let's go ahead and let's create a 3D object that's going to be a child of our first person controller. I'm going to go create 3D object. In this case, let's do a cylinder. It's going to be overlaid on there. Maybe it's in a different spot, but that's okay. We're going to do a couple of rotations so that this guy is angled like you might be holding a spear, and let's just make it so it's right-handed, and then just lower the scale on some of these. And we're going to adjust this so that we can see it in something like that. Let's make sure that this guy is a child of our object so that it moves along with us. And if we just get into play, then hopefully we can see it. And right now, this spear looks like we're holding it, and it has like this bob. It's not really animated through us. It's actually, if you can see the camera as this moves across in my scene view over here, you'll notice that the camera itself is the thing that's moving up and down. And we can pause that just to see what's going on there. Let's go into the camera, and we're going to pause the head bob. There's a built-in parameter that we can use, head bob, and now that we turned it off, then we can see that the camera is not going to move up and down, and you can see that the spear is not moving anymore, which is fine, right? If we want to have our spear to have its own bob, then we can write that. Why don't we do that? Let's go to pause. Let's get out here, and like we said, we're going to use the animation window. Pull up my notes that I had. We use the animation window to create animations, and let's create our first one. It's going to be our idle versus walk, right? And let's make sure that we can either select the cylinder itself now that it's attached to our parent, or we can create the animations on our main character. And so it's up to you. You're going to find situations when you want to do one or the other. Why don't we learn how to do it so that the object that we're going to be moving around is actually a child of the parent. And so let's just rename this so that we call it spear or stick. It's not really a spear, let's call it stick. And let's create an animation based on this parent object. We'll go to animation, and we know that this animation is linked to the object that we have selected in the hierarchy. Right now we don't have any animations for our first person controller, and you can see that. Let's shrink down this window so we can see some of this. My window, that's fine. Let's go to create. We're going to create first person stick animations. And as always, it's going to ask us to add a property. In this case, we want to add the stick, and we're going to want to create some movement over time. And so when we want to have some movement, we're going to be referencing the transform attached to this stick object, right? So like every object in the scene has a transform. In this case, we just want to adjust the position of it. So let's go back here, and we're going to add a property. When we add property, you'll see that there's some options that we can have. And part of it is its own transform. We don't want to move its transform. We want to have the sticks transform. So we'll select that, drop down. We're going to access its transform. And we mainly want to do its position. And rather than selecting all of it, we just want to make sure we have position, hit plus. My cat is meowing. Okay. Now that we have stick position on there, we can see that we can access it in the 3 different dimensions, and we want to be paying attention to where this red line is, because that's going to allow us to see where we're adding things. So what we want to do is maybe we want to have this thing move track left and right and a little bit up and down. Let's see if we can do that. We want to have this guy move in the X position, and we can just go ahead and select this, and I think click and drag will just change it. If we have it 0, then you see that it comes to like center line. Maybe we only want to start out at max, and then somewhere along the way, maybe quarter way through, we want this value to change to maybe 0.7. Is that enough? It's going to be up to you. Maybe you say 0.5, right? So it's going to be start out at, like I said, this red line is what's going to be important. So it's going to, let's have it start out at 1 and drag this red line over to here, and we'll say at that point we want it to be 0.5. From there, we'll drag it a little bit more, and we'll say that it returns back to 1. Start here and just slowly drag across. We can see that it moves like this. And we can continue to add more when we just have this clip end there. So we can say that this has 10 samples. Let's move back. Delete all this stuff here. And so the sample looks like this. If you think that's what you want, then cool, let's use that. If not, then maybe we can make it even simpler, so it just vacillates like this. That's not good enough because we want to see this go back to the right. So we'll have to have one going this way and then back. If you want to add another dimension so it moves up and down, as you imagine, we can go back here and we'll have it start here. Let's say that this is always the starting point. And let's have it go up and down a little bit. And so we'll start at this, whatever position it is now. And then when it gets maybe here, we want to make it halfway, then let's just raise it up a little bit. Let's see, 0.7, that's fine. And then we'll have it come back down to here. Maybe, I'm not sure. Let's say that here. And then up again here, 0.7. And at the end of this, overall, we'll have it come back to 0.5. Let's say that this is what we want, and we'll save that. Let's go into our animator, and let's make sure that we have our first-person controller selected. And we know annoyingly that this window doesn't like to resize. So animations, I named it very poorly. It should have been named something else. Let's see. Let's go into, let's say that you accidentally named this animation badly. We should be able to rename it. I hope. Maybe not. We'll just leave it. Cool. So we have our, let's call this our idle animation. Go back here, we'll say that this is our idle. Let's make sure that our FPS controller then has animator attached to it. As soon as you start making an animation, by default the animator should be appearing, but we just want to make sure. We'll go back into our scene now, and you'll notice that there's our stick in relation to our character. If we hit play without moving around, we can see, if I hit escape, click on here, we're still in play. You can see that it's cycling through our stick animation. Great. So we can walk around now. Let me get into the scene part, and we can walk around and see our stick animation moving. And this is without our head bob, right? And so like you can choose to use the head bob. You might get like really seasick. Well, let's see what happens, right? If we have our head bob turned back on as well as our idle animation, what does that look like? It's kind of working against itself. So we'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to use the head bob or not, but you know now how to use how to create a basic idle animation when you're walking. And you can, let's say that you're not happy with that and that like the speed is not fast enough, you can adjust the speed here or in the animation itself so that you're truncating the overall time that it takes to move through these keyframes. Let's say our speed, we want to increase the speed to something like 2, so it moves twice as fast. We go into here. And that is obviously too fast, so we'll go here. Maybe that's a little bit smoother. Change it to 125. It's going to be up to you, depending on how many frames you put it, to be the speed that you like. So now let's move on from, let's say that if we hit something like our mouse button when we're in the game to make this stick swing or jab, how might we do that, right? So let's go to our first person controller, make sure that we're selected this guy. We can go back to our animation. There's our original animation. Let's go and make a new one. And like we normally do, we'll select this drop down and hit new clip. And this one is going to be FPS, let's name it properly this time, FPS Stick Jab. Again, we're going to add a property. In this case, we're going back to stick, and we want to use its transform again. Again, it's going to be the position. And over time, what we want to do is we're going to have it start out with where we are. Hopefully, it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and then we're going to affect the Z position, I believe. Let's see, it's going to start here, and let's say that halfway through it, let's say that we only want 10 frames. Get rid of this guy. Somewhere here, very quickly, we want to adjust our Z position, and we want it to poke out. Maybe 3. 3 is too far. This goes 2. And again, we want to make sure that where the red line is what we're going to be affecting. And so here we want to start out at our starting position. And then at this point, at this keyframe, we wanted to poke out in the 2 position. And then maybe quickly come back to 1. Let's see how that looks. That seems like it's really slow. And so this is at like the 1 second marker. Let's move in, move everything, select everything, move it over. Select everything, move this over. So that our jab is, maybe I want the poking out part to be quicker, and the return to be a little bit slower. Seems about right. Okay, let's say that we're happy with that. Go back in the animator. Now we have our jab animation there. we want to be able to make a transition. To make a transition, we'll right click on the one that we're going to or coming from, and we're going to make the other one from there. Just like we did for our 2D animations, we need to create some parameters that we can use for the animator to understand what's going on. And so we're going to create, let's say, we want to create a transition here state, and maybe we'll say that this is going to be stabbing. So we're going to say that when we're stabbing, we're going to adjust the condition. And so if we click on this guy, the transition of it, we go to the inspector, and we want to create a condition for a transition from the idle to the jab. And this is going to be conditions, and we want to say that when stabbing is true, we want to move from here to there. And when stabbing is false, then we want to be when stabbing is false. From there, we want to make sure that we only stabbing once. And so if I click on my animation in the animator window, click again, it's gonna give me this inspector view, and I want to make sure that time I don't loop it. Otherwise, it's gonna be jabbing, jabbing, jabbing when this is true. So it should go here, stab once, and then wait for stabbing to be false to be able to go back to the idle. From there, we need to go into our character controller, where we'll be able to address this animator. So this is just like when we did in 2D. We're going to write a simple script, and let's say that this is going to be animation controller, animation, FPS, animations. Let's double click on that, open up Mono Develop, and let's see if we can write a simple animation script. Again, we want to make sure that our class name matches our file name, or our script name. And what we want to do is we need to have, we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call it, we're going to make it a Boolean, and this is going to be match up with our name. Again, it doesn't have to be the same name that we have. It'll be Boolean stabbing, and we're going to set it to be false at start. And we want to be able to address our animator. This is the guy here that's going to be able to control our animations. So it's going to be animator, and we're going to call it, I'm going to name it anim, you can call it whatever you want, just so that you know that this is the name of our, nickname of our animator. And we want to be able to turn this, addresses the animations of our object, player object. And set this to be true or false when player is stabbing. Cool. Let's see. From there, we want to be addressing our animator. And let's set up a simple if statement, conditional, to say that if input, Unity class that allows us to access our player input get key down. We're gonna say that when we're gonna use our mouse. So mouse get mouse button down. We're gonna select which button. This is gonna be our primary button. That's our 0 or left button. We want to say that when we press this button, we're gonna address our animator, and we're gonna set the bool to be, we need to first access the name of it, and it's going to be stabbing, and that refers to the parameter there. So we're looking for the name that matches this name that right there, and make sure that spelling matters. It's taking a string, so we need to be we have to put in quotes, and we're going to set that to be true when we click the mouse. And then we can, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's just set a really simple cooldown, and we're going to invoke the CoolDown or StopStab function. And basically we're writing a real simple function. Ooh, get out of here. It's another, there we go, parentheses. Void stop stab function, and we're gonna set the animator dot set bool to be false. And this should be called at, let's say, 1 second after we stab. Set bool, and we're addressing the, it's all wrong. Well, we're setting our stabbing parameter to be false. Okay, and so this is saying that when we press the button, our left mouse button, it's going to turn our parameter over here to be true, which should be triggering our state to allow us to run that animation. And after 1 second of clicking the mouse, then it's going to call this StopStab function and set the bool again, that one over here, to be false, and so that we get out of that and hopefully get back into our idle animation. Last thing that we need to do is we have this animator, but we don't reference the instance of it, and so we need to say that we know that this script is attached to this first-person controller object, and on that first-person controller object is a component, the animator object that we want to be referencing, and so we need to make that connection, and we'll do that at start. And so we're going to make that reference here. We're going to say anim equals get component. We've done this several times now. When we're getting a component on our an object that we have a script attached to, and we're looking for animator. The type is animator, and it's going to be part of our game object that this script is attached to. That way, when we reference this anim, it's talking about the one that is on our first-person controller animator. Let's try this. Let's save and build. Move this window out of the way. And this guy's attached here. Hopefully, let's try it. Let's see what happens. We're going to leave this animator window open. We should hopefully see this cycling, and when we press our mouse button down, we should see the transition over. Ooh, okay, so when we pressed it, it worked, but I have a misspelling. You can see that in my console. It says trying to invoke FPS Stop Stab, but couldn't be called. I did a mistake. We can see it here. I'm calling the StopStab, but I misspelled the way that I spelled the function here. So calling it with invoke is the same thing, same issues in that the spelling and capitalization do matter. So it was trying to call this lowercase StopStab and it wasn't working. Make sure that you have a capital S StopStab, or however you're spelling this original function. And we'll just add a comment here. It's gonna set the animator parameter stabbing to false. So you build, we'll go back here. And we saw that it did stab, but it didn't go back, right? We had it cycling here. Let's go back here, hit play. With my idle, I'm about to hit mouse button down, press it in now. See it jabbed, and then went back. So we can see that when I click on it, it doesn't start that animation when I want it to. It's not jumping out of the stick idle before getting the stick jabbed. And why is that happening? We can go into our transition, and let's get rid of that has exit time. and see what happens. Hopefully what it does is going to say that it's going to jump to our stab when whenever we press that mouse. So it's not waiting to finish the current animation before moving on to the next. So it's doing what it wants, but at the moment we're not getting out of our jab soon enough. So maybe we can just shorten the length of this thing, something like 0.5. It's not gonna like it. We gotta put F to float. Come back here, hit play. And we got our jabbing action. I'm clicking the mouse button and move around. From there, what's cool is that then we can have things like, we can go into our stick, let's go to our scene, and then we can add things like a little collider at the end of our stick to say that when it bumps into something, if I add a sphere collider, turn it into a trigger if I want to, and adjust the radius so that it's on the end of this guy, then we can write a script for this spear and say that when it runs into a bad guy, the bad guy disappears or something like that. Not going to do this in this video. We're going to add one more type of animation, and what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our first-person controller, go to animation, and in this case we're going to not just do a jab anymore. Let's create a first-person FPS stick swing. Let's say that we want to swing our bat, our stick, so that it starts out here and maybe it goes from this side over to the left and then it comes back around. Let's see if we can do that. Let's go here, stick, go here, and we're going to be adjusting the transform and just the position here. And so we're going to start in this position, and then quickly we'll maybe move it sideways. Let's see. How do we want to do this? Wish I could slide this around. Maybe make it move to the side a little bit, maybe even further, almost off screen, and raise it up. So we're starting from here and we're going up a little bit. And maybe we'll rotate it a tad. So if we want to do rotation, right now we're doing swing, position, right? And we want to add the transform dot rotation. Make sure that when we add the property that we're not doing the regular object, we want to make sure that we hit stick. Sorry about that. Go to stick, transform, rotation. Now that we have that there, then maybe we'll rotate it a little bit more than it is, 100. It's tough to see. Can we get it this way? Nope, we gotta have both windows. We want to rotate it about the y-axis, right? Let's turn it to 30 degrees. Great, and so you can see that it used to be 0. We're rotating it away from us as if we're getting ready to swing something. And then let's have the object move from where it was to over here. And so this Y rotation is going to be something smaller. And where was it before? We were over here at 10. So maybe somewhere around here, then it's going to be like -40. And then we want to adjust the position of everything. we want this guy to move over to the left a little. And 0.5. But we want to have it down some. So let's say that we also want this to angle a little bit, so it's maybe pivoting like that. How might we do that? We're at, what, 90? X rotation is at 90. So if we go more than that, 120, 110. Let's play it now. Let's say we're happy with that. And that's going to be our third animation. So now we have another animation, and we're going to maybe start from idle. Every time we're going to do something, it's going to go back to idle. We'll make another transition. Transition back here. Again, I'm right-clicking and then making sure that this transition doesn't have exit time. And we're going to create another parameter here. It's going to be another bool, and it's going to be swinging. We're going to create conditions for these transitions so that when I am swinging, I want to start that at true and get out of it when swinging is false. I'm going to save that, go back into our code. In this case, we're going to write a stop swing, similar to what we had before. There's other ways you could do this. We could use part of the animation to trigger this if we wanted to, but in this case we're doing it this way. We're going to call swinging to be false, and then write another part to say that if, maybe one way to do it is like this, else if input dot get mouse button down. Mouse button down is our second mouse, then we're going to, this is going to be our right click, it's going to be our set our anim dot set bool, and you can probably work fairly quickly because it's just like the other one. Swinging, lowercase swinging is equal to true. And then we're going to invoke then our stop swing, spelling it correctly, hopefully not quickly. And I'm going to call that after 1 second, because I think that animation is a little bit longer than the other one. Swinging to be true, doesn't like that parentheses, get rid of that. Okay, if we click a right mouse button, it's going to address our animation, set the Boolean parameter that we have over here, hopefully it's spelled right, to be true. It's going to trigger that transition into the animation, and then after 1 second it's going to invoke the stop swing, which is going to set that parameter again over here to be false and jump out of that, hopefully getting back into our idle. Stabbing works, yeah, jabbing or stabbing, and then we're going to swing. Because I'm a big dummy. I have the wrong parameter. This should be swinging. Swinging. You can see that this swinging again is looping. How did we learn? Did we learn how to change that? We did this earlier. Get out of play, double click on this guy, and we'll stop the loop time so that it'll run a singular time. It's kind of like our audio clips when we don't want it to loop. There's our swing. Again, it seems like our animation is getting finished sooner than 1 second. So let's just go back here. We're going to use magic number. Don't like that. We can set some floats if we wanted to. float. This is going to be stab dir, and the other one is going to be swing dir, and this is going to allow us, if we use it this way, to control the length of our, essentially our exit times. Not dot stab dir, but like that. And then we'll be able to control all of that in our animator. Go our inspector. Go here, and we have our dir. Our stab dir was 5 seconds, and we know that 1 second is too long, so we're going to set this to be maybe something like 0.7 seconds. Cool. Now we have our stab and we have our swing. We have a collider on there. We're not going to use that today. Maybe we'll make a second video to do that. One last thing is, as you can see, we in this pre-built character controller from Unity assets, is that when we have our camera moving around, we can look around, but then what? Our stick is not really following our look, right? And so, although it's there, it's not really following our look. And most first-person shooter games or first-person perspective games has that object that we're using, be it a gun or something else. We should probably attach this stick to the object that has a camera on it. And so we know that this child has a camera on it. Let's see what happens. I haven't tried it yet, but let's just drag it on here. Hopefully our animations don't break. We still should be able to control everything. And let's try it. So that when we look, our stick is still there, but our animations are gone. That kind of sucks. So let's see if we can make those corrections. Now that we put our stick into our child here, let's relink our elements. First person controller is our animator, and so right now we're trying to relink our stick animation because we just moved it from the child of the first person controller to child of the camera object, because we wanted to have our stick stay in relation to our camera and not just our character, right? And so what happens is that we can see, click on here, we go to our animation, you'll notice that this area is in a yellow color saying missing. Oh, the stick that used to be a child of this object is missing. If we come back and make it a child again, it should realize it's there, right? But if we make it a child of the camera object, then when we click back in the animation, it's missing. So what do we do from there? We can't just, we just don't want to waste a lot of time remaking everything. So what we can do is if we click on this object, we click on it again, it's kind of like as if we were renaming an object over here, like a regular computer like Windows or Mac. If we click on it twice, not double click, but click once and then again, it's going to give us the option to tell it where it is in terms of the hierarchy again. So we understand that this object here is a child of not the original object, but a deeper, it's a child of the child, right? And so we need to point the stick object to where this FPS controller understands. So what we can do is we can put a slash. Let's see, what kind of slash does it have to be? It has to be a regular slash. Double click on it, 1, 2 click, and then we're going to type in the name of the child now, first person character. In your case, it could be something else, but I need to type it the same way it appears. This is the name of the object that it's now a deeper child of, and then we put the slash stick. Hit enter, and it finds itself again, and it should then work. What we need to do is go back to the other objects, and it's going to be the same thing. Because the other animations, it's going to be the same thing. It's looking for the stick that used to be its child, but now the stick is a child of its own child, and so we need to rename it. We need to rename the location. So first person character. I'm sure that sometime in the rest of your dev lives you're going to come across this issue, and rather than having to rename everything or remake everything, you can hit you can use this tool. And another way to just do this is if you're on a Mac, then you select the name, hit return, and then it should bring up that renaming dialog. Again, I'm typing in the name of the object that it's now a child of, first person character, slash, enter, turns blue again, so it's back to normal, first person character, slash. Let's make sure that all of these are good. Let's get into play. Let's lower this a little bit. Let's see if that fixes it. Does that? Perfect.